Hello, Niamh, Brooke, and Shelby Cook here. We are recording our special Film East chats from the London Film Festival. We're not at the London Film Festival. In fact, it ended a couple weeks ago, and we're a bit behind, but life happens. It's
Better late
been
than never.
better late than never, exactly. So we did this last year as well. And we just kind of had a very casual chat where we just talked about some of the films that we saw and kind of discuss them and our overall experience with the festival. I think single-handedly we are the reason why the press still got a online portal this year. I think they listened to our podcast and they were like, they're right. We should keep the online stuff for the press, and here we are.
I'm not joking. They must have listened to our podcast. They
Yeah.
must have been shocked because we've done the London. Well, I don't. You've done it maybe another year before me, but I've done the London Film Festival now for 2 years. This is my third year as press. The other 2 years, one year was fully online. The other year was sort of
Mm,
half semi-online, like this year. But both years were like weirdly timetabled.
mm.
Like you had to, it was done like it was a real in-person event. You had to be on the website at 10 a.m. to watch the film. You could do a sneaky trick and pause it if you had to, go out, but it would delete after X amount of hours and you couldn't
Mm.
watch the film. This year, it was an on-demand service that ran longer than the festival.
Yeah, it started like 2 weeks before the festival and then ended 2 weeks after the festival.
It made it so much more accessible for people
Hmm.
like us that work full time and do this, are hoping to get onto the ladder. It made it that we could watch it after a full day of work. Like we
Hmm.
didn't have to, quickly log on your actual computer and pause it and then have to rush around. Like, no, it just made it such a nice experience. You could pick and choose when you wanted to watch things. It was great. And I am all for this new thing. And please keep it next year, BFI. It
Yeah,
was great.
I definitely, and I think I mean, I really admire the BFI because that's something that they want to do is make things more accessible. And I always have found the London Film Festival to be the most accessible for people like us who are smaller outlets who aren't necessarily in that bigger London critic sphere yet. And I feel like being able to have this on-demand platform has really elevated it to allow people outside of London to
Mm.
take part in it, because it that does very centralize it. Like not everyone can, and that was something I had applied for press in like 2019 or something, and the press pass at that point was £45, and I couldn't justify paying £45 when I would only be able to go to London like 2 days out of the entire festival. And so it's like this isn't very accessible to me as someone who doesn't live in London and I have to travel into London because I can't afford a hotel to stay in London. I can't afford to constantly be taking the train back and forth. Like I have a full-time job. I have a life that I need to do outside of this. So I think that is very much a step in the right direction of making these films accessible and film festivals accessible to people who aren't in that big city central area. And it allows people who live in these smaller outlets of England and the UK to be able to participate in these things and get that criticism experience that they want.
One thing I will say is that I completely understand why these events occur. So, for anyone listening who wants to be press at London Film Festival or who doesn't know how being press at London Film Festival works, if you want to see the films in person, so a lot of the films on the on-demand uh, system, that's probably not the correct term,
Mm-hmm.
are not huge films. They aren't
Yeah.
the gala films. They aren't the films that we were all, they aren't your Knives Out. They aren't your
Yeah.
My Policeman's. They are smaller films that not so many people are going to rush to go and see, which for us is great because we get to review films that aren't saturated. We get, films that not many people are going to have heard of, and we get to, see great film. But if we did want the Knives Out and My Policeman's, you have to queue outside central London cinemas at about 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
to not even be guaranteed a seat in the screening. You just have to sort of hope for the best. Now, for people live in America and Norwich, that's quite early
Uh-huh.
to get to London for. And hotels in London are expensive. And even now, I still think there is a level of inaccessibility because
Yeah.
unless I shell out what? So say I wanted to do 2 days at London Film Festival, that would be like 300 quid just for
Mm-hmm.
hotels, and then there's food, and actually, it's just still I can't quite get there. I've tried to do it this year. I tried to go to London, but it was still going to be 100 quid, and I was
Mm-hmm.
not even guaranteed because you can go to public screenings, but that is if there are tickets left. You are sort of the filler seats if you're press. You will get free tickets, but that's if they're free. And I couldn't justify paying £100 just to get turned away. So I didn't get to see any of the big ones. So I think hopefully in the future they will hold later screenings for press. So if we do need to come down, even if it's lunchtime, that still gives us more time, not getting up at like 5 a.m. So yeah,
Yeah, and
next time, BFI.
that's something that I particularly us because we're not an outlet that makes money. We are all volunteers. Um, that's something that I don't think a lot of these because they're so used to these big outlets like, and this was something that I kind of stuck in my head when I went to Toronto was it's the People magazines, it's the Variety, it's the BBCs, and those companies pay for their journalists to go and they pay for their hotels, they pay for their airfare. So it is like so. I mean, I dropped about $1,000 to go to Toronto, and that was on hotel and airfare. Um, so even though the press pass was free and I got to see all the movies for free, it was still like that had to come out of my pocket
Yeah.
to get that career experience. So I think this is something that it is, like you said, it is completely inaccessible for um, if you want to do the public things, but it is like a step in the right direction to at least allow us to see some films and to give that platform to those. It's good for us as critics and journalists who want to review festivals and get that festival experience and have it on our CV when we apply to other places. And it's good for those smaller films that probably aren't going to be as seen by as many people to get them to be able to be reviewed as well. But that is always that's such a crazy thing because that was the one thing I knew about the London Film Festival press was you had to queue and you were
Yeah.
queuing for like ages. You were queuing at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So when I went to Toronto, I was like, I'm gonna queue. Like I'm not gonna miss any of these press screenings. And I went up in like the day before because I think it was Joanna Hogg's film was the one morning. It was like 8:30 or something. And so I went up to the cinema just so I knew where it was so I wouldn't get lost. That's my anxiety talking. And I went up to the person. I was like, "Oh, like how early do the queues start for the press?" And she's like, "Huh?" And I was like, do you have to queue outside for like press? Like, is there a limited amount?" She's like, "No, there's plenty of seats in the morning because no one wants to come and see the films in the morning." Because with Toronto, you can go to any screening at all and you get like an actual ticketed seat. So you get that ticket in your hand, so you know you're going to that screening. Um, so I think that is a much better system, but I can understand why they don't really want to do that because that takes away general public seats
Yeah.
as well.
I remember my first London Film Festival. I had no idea how it works. I assumed that I was press. I got to see everything.
Uh-huh.
And I really wanted to see Soul. Soul, the Pixar film, was screening, and I missed the sale day. So I sent this really weedy email to BFI saying, "I'm press. Can I have a ticket?" And she was like, "No." Every time I think about it, I'm like, ew, why did I do?
Hey, at least you had to try. That's, it's
And I
better
was like,
than
I want to see some Pixar.
they're like too bad.
Yeah. Watch it on Disney Plus like everybody else.
uh so I think that's enough about the context behind it. Clearly, as you can tell from this conversation, neither one of us actually got to London um
No.
to see any of the films, but we did watch some of them on there. And again, like I said, this is a good opportunity to get those films out there because there's a lot like one of the films I saw in the 2020 film festival. Oh gosh, what is it? I can't remember what it's called. It was like some Ukrainian film. And I really loved it at the time. Like it was a really great film and it didn't get distributed. And it just now in 2022 got distributed. So that gives you, you do get that heads up in being able to see a lot of movies that might be more successful later down the road. But I will say there wasn't really any films this year that overly excited me and overly impressed me. I
Mm.
think last year was such a good year because there was The Worst Person in the World and Drive My Car, which those two films I think were so fantastic, and that just made the festival for me, where the brilliance of those two films. Um, and particularly with Drive My Car being such like this like what's the word I'm looking for? This lower hit where people weren't expecting it to be this massive hit and to go on to win the international Oscar. So that was just so exciting being able to see that film and then see it go on and be so successful. But I don't know about you. There wasn't really any films this year that really like overly excited me and that I watched and I just absolutely fell in love with.
No, there wasn't any for me. So I watched one feature and three shorts this year because life took over a little bit this year when I was doing the London Film Festival. But yeah, I mean, I liked all of them. There was one that really didn't strike a chord. Usually I can see something that I like in a film. I'm not always particularly cynical, even though I do love shitting on films. But um, yeah, they were all okay. I liked the feature that I watched, but it was nothing special. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, you have to watch it. Yeah, they were all sort
Yeah.
of mediocre this year.
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with one that I thought out of all the ones that I watched about five or six features. Um, The Woodcutter Story is the one that I think I liked the most. It's a Finnish film, um, and it's sort of set in this snow tundra. So it's all the way up towards the Arctic, and there's just nothing in this town but snow. And so it kind of makes this sort of like Lynchian feel to it, where it feels very abstract and surreal, and it's otherworldly, and it's a very avant-garde black comedy. But it had these sort of elements in it that I really wasn't expecting from it. It had these great moments of like conversations about gender roles and expectations, lots of comments on industrialism and breaking down these towns where there's nothing there. I think like the characters were like coal miners or they all worked in a factory and they were discontinuing the factory, and so that obviously gets rid of their entire economy. There's nowhere to for them to work, and it just had these moments of like real shocking. It was very much, it had these moments of like realism. It felt like a social realist film, but then it just had these like really shocking, like intense surreal moments. Like at one point someone's head gets cut off, and it was so surreal, and just like it was such a weird film. But it was like weird in a good way. It was like very Lynchian, where you're not quite sure what it was about, but you're like, I kind of like this.
The only feature that I watched this year was not one that was high up on my list. I actually wanted to watch other ones more, but I ended up watching a film called I Love My Dad, which is based on a true story of a man called James Morosini. I hope I say that right. He is the director, writer, and he stars in the film. So James plays a version of himself where in the film, James has just tried to commit suicide and he's come out of a treatment center and he's sort of you know acquainting himself with the world, and he is estranged from his dad. His dad and he don't have a good relationship, and his dad has been constantly trying to get in touch with his son to see how he's doing. And after meeting a particularly pretty waitress in a diner, the dad thinks the best thing to do is to create an account, pretend to be the waitress, and chat to his son. That's, chat to his
Yeah,
son as a pretty girl.
normal.
Yeah. James falls in love with the girl, and the film plays. It's a film that's very much sort of to my taste. It plays with form and it plays with style. So you see every time the dad is talking to his son, it's the waitress actually talking to him. She's present on the scene. It takes the mick out of this story that's actually kind of gross when you think about it. It's a dad trying to do a nice thing but actually doing the worst thing possible. And there are some really funny sequences when he wants to kiss the girl and it like pans around and he's actually just kissing his dad. And like it's just really revels in being this cringe comedy about this really awkward thing. I really liked the film. I wouldn't say it's the best film I've ever seen. It's
Mm.
definitely a directorial first. I think it had some really great moments. I think it played with texting quite well because it can be really dull watching people text for
Yeah.
2 hours, and they actually made it very entertaining. Patton Oswald of Remy the Rat fame played the dad, and Claudia Sloweski, I don't know how you say her name, Phineas O'Connell's girlfriend. She plays the diner girl, and she is actually really good. She holds her own against Patton Oswalt. I would say she is one of the, highlights of the film. Her comedy is great. If you want a film to make you cringe a bit and make you giggle and you're not quite sure what to watch, I would recommend it, but I would say there are better films out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's always something that is always so cringe with films trying to be modern, is how do you do the text on the screen?
Yeah.
Like, it's always something that it just always pulls you out of the movie because you're like, oh God, what is this? What's happening?
And it's always so like the lingo is always like LOL, YOLO, and it's
Yeah.
like this is from a
This
decade
is not
ago.
real life.
Like, or it's like my favorite thing is like, oh, you've gone viral and it has 100 views. Like, wow, nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Good idea.
That's not how people text. They should have missing words and just be a mess. You have to try and interpret what the person's saying because there's so many typos. That's how people text.
Just a bit gross. But yeah,
That's
I love
how,
my dad. Solid
yeah.
3 stars. It was all right.
I mean, I saw this film. It was a South Korean film. It's called Woman in the White Car. And this was sort of the way that I pick films at a film festival is I look at the still, and if the still from the film intrigues me, then I watch the movie. Right. And that is very much the epitome of picking the book by its cover. But it hasn't really strayed me in the wrong direction yet. But I watched this film, A Woman in the White Car, and it was sort of this mystery of this woman shows up at a hospital. No one knows who she is. She's sort of in this panic, and she has another woman with her. This woman is very hurt. She was, I think, smacked in the back of the head with a rock, so she's bleeding everywhere, and this woman's just hysterical, and she can't explain what's happening. So the police obviously get called in to try and figure out what this story is, and it sort of unfolds into this whole very complex and very intricate narrative. And at times I think it had a lot of plot twists. So it was like very much relied on the unreliable narrator, because the woman telling the story, she couldn't be trusted because no one knew who she was. There were some people who were like, oh, I know the woman that she brought in, but it doesn't make sense to this other woman. She was calling them sisters. They clearly weren't sisters. One of the nurses knew the other woman that came in with her. They're like, oh, that's not her sister. Like, I've met her sister, like, and that's not her. And so no one knew really what this woman's story was. No one could quite understand it. So the police officer goes on the investigation and sort of following up with a lot of these things and trying to get the true story behind it. It does have elements of that buddy cop drama where the older cop is this woman. So that was a very interesting narrative, because I think a lot with buddy cop films or detective films, it's always an older man with a younger assistant. But it was this older woman. She had a lot of her own traumas, and sort of these traumas sort of overlapped with the story that was happening with this mysterious woman. And it was funny at times. It had too many plot twists. It was just like every third, it was very Korean drama, like way over the top, so dramatic. But I think that added to it very much was a Korean drama. And the story was changing constantly. It was just so dramatic and over the top, and like it was giving you whiplash, like trying to keep track of what was going on. But I think particularly the last 30 minutes really stood out to me when they sort of finally started to wrap up the ending. It really stood out. I think it was ultimately a very good film. I would recommend seeing it because it was a very interesting film. It had a lot of interesting points that it was making and conversations about women's places in society and how women interact with men and how they interact with other women, and a lot to do with mental illness, because this woman is very mentally ill. She has a lot of depression and anxiety, and she has a lot of illnesses, schizophrenia, and then also these sort of undertones of what the trauma that the detective is dealing with as well. So it was a very nice film. I think it was one I really enjoyed. It was so long. I think it was almost 3 hours. And because the plot twist just kept coming. I was like, oh my God, this movie's never gonna end. But it was, yeah, I think it's definitely one to watch because it was quite interesting.
Hmm.
For I don't. This is something that we just talked about in the last filmy chats that we were recording with the group, but my blind spot in cinema is Asian cinema. So I've been trying to watch more different types of Asian cinema. So I can't say definitively that this is something that's a bit different for Korean films because most of the only Korean films that I've seen is Bong Joon-ho's films. But I do think that it was interesting in the use of women, and having the conversation of women and women being the centerpiece of the story, was very interesting. So it was, I would I would give it 3 stars. It was good. It captivated me. I was interested in it, but I'm probably not going to watch it again.
I've got my first 2-star film of the
Oh
festival.
no.
This is the one that I watched and I went, yeah, you know, just like that. It was just kind of a waste of my time. I'm sure some people would love it, but for me personally, like it just didn't resonate with me. It was a film called Young Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a Czech Republic film about a rapper influencer, you know, hi guys, aha, you know, that kind of, it is in a way it's a satire because it's kind of showing just how ridiculous like these people are, because he's at the start of the film he's got the sunglasses and the chain and he's biting it, then he checks his watch and he puts his fry cap on and he goes back into, you know, the fast food restaurant he works in. Like, I love the idea and the premise, but the second he goes into the fast food restaurant, I don't know if it's just me and I didn't understand the film, but it's set like he's frying, his mum's flirting with his manager, and some people are taking the mick out of him. It's about 10 minutes long, maybe longer. And I was like, nothing is happening. I'm just watching these people kind of say quite cringy dialogue. And then he's going, oh, I just want one more follower, one more follower. And then the film ends with a fight. It's live streamed and he gets that one more follower and he's happy. And again, I love the idea of the extremities someone will go nowadays to become influential and, you know, to get that influencer tag, but in execution was just cringe without it trying to be. I just found
Mm-hmm.
myself like, I really don't like it. But had it, gone back to the script and worked a little bit better in like trying to convey what it's trying to say about his friends and family, and just centered on Michael.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't for me. I really didn't
Mm-hmm.
like it. Cool.
Um, the only short film that I watched was one called Mars, which was it was an LGBTQ film.
Yes, I have seen Mars.
And it was so charming. It was a very charming film. And if you are currently, well, this isn't going to go out in time, but it's playing at the Norwich Film Festival too.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
interviewing the director tomorrow. So
well, yeah, there you go. You can watch back because this isn't going to be going out the time that the festival
yeah.
goes is on. But you can watch back. I'm sure there will be a recording of it. And I think it's a very, very sweet short film. It was just very, very nice. I don't know if you have anything to say on that as well.
I think we're in this age where I think so many people still aren't quite sure about trans issues. I think a
Mm,
lot of people nowadays know about transgender people. You
mm-hmm,
know, I would say 10 years ago, I wouldn't say, you know, some parents would know. But nowadays people know, but I don't think there's a full understanding of the complexities that come with it. And I think this film really cleverly, without, you know, weighing it down, gives people an insight into actual lives. And, you know, it's a
mm,
celebration of being transgender and the normality of it. It doesn't, I love that message at the end, like, though they are normal, they get to be normal with a little bit of sparkle. And you know,
mm-hmm,
what makes them different, and what makes you different makes you you. And I think it's a really important message for people, especially young people, to see and sort of learn from and grow from. So I think, yeah, I think Mars is a good, important film. I think it was great.
mm-hmm. I agree.
So the next film that I saw is a Scottish short film called Groom. And Groom tells the story of a 15-year-old girl who has left school. She wasn't enjoying it. She's had to leave. And her mother said, well, you've got to get a job. And we follow the young girl on her first day at a beauty salon. Now, this young girl is sort of presented as a bit of a tomboy, you know, sort of hair unstyled and a long, low pony, a hoodie, jeans, and she looks fiercely uncomfortable throughout the day and amongst these highly, beautified women. And the film sort of, I can't quite tell what it's trying to say,
Mm.
but it shows the cattiness of women in the workplace. It also shows a fascination of this world that this girl didn't know, of, the manicured nails and the lashes. It shows how uncomfortable she is in that world. And also, as the name suggests, it kind of shows this unhealthy relationship between the manager and the 15-year-old girl. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very unexplicit. You're not quite sure if you're imagining it or if that's what the film was trying to say. And it uses this tension and suspicion because you're unsure of what the manager's actual intentions are. You're not sure if it's just her trying to take this young girl under her wing or if there is malice behind what she's doing. And one of the scenes that really struck me is that she's like, hang on, let me, let's play with your hair. And then she grabs some scissors and chops off her long hair
Oh my
into a bob
gosh.
in one swipe. And the girl's just like, she's like, you like it, don't you? You really, really like it. And she's like, yeah, I do like it. And it was, a bit shocking and very unnerving, but I can't tell you if I actually liked it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those films that I knew it was trying to say something, but I wasn't quite sure. I will say the set and the way it was shot, like the actual set, it was this bright pink,
Mm.
highly feminine space. I thought that was really cool to see because you don't really see, this baby pink space very
Mm.
often in films. I thought it was a really interesting background to have of a film that's so tense and weird. So that was fun. But yeah, again, liked it. Don't know if I fully understood it, but I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was okay. It was just one of those films that was like, oh, all right.
Yeah, and maybe it's one that you just have to sit on for a while and you think, oh,
Yeah.
and then in 5 years' time, when you have new experiences in life, you can think more about that film just pops up and you're just like,
Ah.
I get it now. One of the other features that I saw was 1976, and it's a Chilean film, and it's set in, you guessed it, 1976. And it's very much this like spy thriller type of story. And it's very different because it has a woman as a lead. She's the one that is it's during the dictatorship in Chile. And this her local priest asks her to help a criminal. So it's this man who is very badly injured. I think like his crime was stealing something, so it wasn't is very much like that Les Mis trope of I stole a loaf of bread, now I'm being put into prison. And so the priest is going against the government by harboring this fugitive at the church. And she is asked to take care of him, and she agrees. And it's sort of her journey to keeping this secret from her family, and finding ways to help this man who she wants to help, but she still feels conflicted by the fact that he is a criminal. And, she's trying to obey the laws of her country, but she doesn't necessarily agree with them. And she's trying to challenge this and still trying to find her place as a housewife. Like that is her role as a housewife. And she makes this excuse that she's going to read to the children at the church, and that's how she gets away with continuously going to the church and helping this man. Um, and there's moments where she is being followed and people are catching up on her, and she has this real fear. It has this very great tenseness to it. And I
Mm.
think at the end, it's been so long since I watched it, but I'm pretty sure at the end, her husband's friend is like someone for the government, and he like kind of alludes to the fact that they know that she's sort of this rebel and is acting against the government. And so it just to frighten her. Oh, they steal her like her passport or something out of her car. And someone breaks into her car. She's at this place where she's not supposed to be. And then the friend gives back the passport. And it's not necessarily explained if he gives back the passport because someone found it and returned it to the government and they were returning it to her, or if the government was the one that stole it out of her car. And it puts the fear of God into her. And I think like at that point she just like she stops doing like because she kind of gets wrapped up in this like revolution plot. And it was very tense. It very much had that Cold War spy thriller type of feeling to it. It was a very captivating film. And it did have that interesting perspective of putting a woman at the center of it. It felt very much like it was a slow burn. It felt a lot like if anyone's seen Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, where really nothing happens the entire film, but it is just like it's more about like building up the atmosphere and the tension
Yeah.
where you know something's coming, but you don't know, like you're like, when is it gonna happen? And it's like it does happen, but then like it's just like, oh, okay, Colin Firth is the spy. And everyone just moves on. And so sorry, spoiler if no one has seen Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But it does have that very slow burn tension, and I did enjoy it. It was a very great styling of the set. They really captured that 70s aesthetic, which I really enjoyed as well.
It sounds really interesting because I don't know about Chilean cinema, but there's not a lot in Western cinema about the Chile dictatorship. I remember I read Talking Whispers at school, but that's literally all I know about that. So that does sound like a really interesting watch to sort of learn a little bit more about that part of history.
Yeah, and it was definitely something that was in the background of the story. They don't really like go into the politics of it. It's more about how this woman as an individual is affected by this and how she doesn't necessarily agree with the rulings of the government and she wants to fight against it, but she still has that fear of not wanting to go against her country, because she becomes this like spy in between, like giving information about the man that's injured to the people who want to break him out in order to get him out of the country so he's not harmed even more, and he's not murdered by the government. So it is a very like, it doesn't deal exactly into the politics of it, but it deals more into the humanity of it. And it was a very interesting film. Yeah.
From a film about dictatorships to a film about dicks, this
Slay.
film, thank you, I was quite proud of that one. My Year of Dicks is my favorite film I watched this year at London Film Festival. It's a wonderful little short based on Pamela Ribbon's memoir of the year she tried to lose her virginity. And lo and behold, it's animated. Of course, it was going to be my favorite film of the festival, but it is a film that plays with form, and it's a film that kind of wonderfully captures that age. Because I don't know if this is TMI for filmies, but I had a thing. I decided at a certain age, I was like, I'm going to lose my virginity. And it perfectly captures that feeling of choosing the person, that right man that gets and every man, it's chaptered. So after every encounter, and she decides he's not the one or that's not the right thing, she will reintroduce herself, and every man gets their own animation style, and the animation changes and the tone will change with each part of her the year. But I thought it was so good, and it was just funny. And what really struck a chord with me is the truth of it, of how you'll ignore how kind of gross that guy is being, or the big red flags of what's going on, and ignoring your best friend that you clearly love, and he loves you too. And it was just such a wonderful little film. It was really funny. It was really honest, and I thought it was great. That is my 4 stars favorite film of the festival I saw. I thought it was fantastic.
How long was it?
It was like 20 plus minutes. It was a solid, like, it was a long film, and it really examined. There's a hilarious scene where she gets sort of found out by her dad, and he's like, do you masturbate? Women don't enjoy sex, Pamela. Women don't like sex. And like, you just see her doing this, and it cuts to her and she's having like a nosebleed and like shaking. Like, it's so funny. Like, it just takes its concept of virginity and just has so much fun with it, because it's an awkward time in your life. It's pretty uncomfortable, and it makes that awkwardness just hilarious, that you can look back on and go, oh my god, we were so stupid.
That's really, I wish I would have seen that film now.
It was so good. It was really, really funny. If you can sort of get your hands on it, I would really recommend it.
I mean, the only other film that I have that I saw was a film called Inland, and it was a British film. I don't remember a damn thing about this movie.
Good review.
There you go.
I always think if you don't remember anything, it sort of speaks for itself.
I'm trying to find a trailer or something so it can like jog my memory. Nope. No trailer. I have no idea what happened. I didn't leave like a review on my letterbox to kind of give me a little hint to what I was thinking. I don't couldn't even tell you what happened. I gave it, I think, 3 stars just to be nice because it was the only British film that I watched during the festival. Oh, I didn't even review it. I just wrote LFF 2022. So I didn't even review it on Letterboxd.
It wasn't worth your time.
That is how conflicted I felt about this film. So um yeah, I saw that one. And
Right.
that's about it.
So overall, how would you rate your experience at this year's LFF?
I I didn't I mean, like we said in the beginning, I didn't really enjoy a lot of the films as much as I did
Mhm.
last year. Um but I feel like this year I was personally having a very stressful month. So I didn't really participate in the festival as much because I couldn't fathom doing one more thing.
Mm.
And you would see, I also saw that film Sick of Myself, which was I actually reviewed on the Film East Instagram. Um, and then I will admit to the Film East Chest listeners, the other films that I reviewed that were labeled LFF, I saw at the Toronto Film Festival.
Shocking. The lies have
I
come out, the truth's been
I will
revealed.
admit I didn't watch any of
Good
those films at
God.
LFF. But I was like, I need some sort of reviews. And I was like, I couldn't gather my energy to do it. I started one review, I think, for another. I don't even remember. Oh, it was a film I didn't even finish watching. I watched like the first 10 minutes of it. I was like, oh, I like this movie. And I started writing like a review on it and I never finished it. I tried, but all of the films that reviewed, except for Sick of Myself, which you can read, that is like a readable review on our film Instagram, which is at films_east. That was one of the actual ones that I watched during the festival. And
You
the other
still
ones,
managed to write more
unfortunately.
than me.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I do feel kind of guilty because I don't think I participated a lot in the festival and I really don't remember a lot of the films that I watched, but maybe that's just the commentary on the caliber of films this year.
I don't think there was any that really leaped out of me, but it
Yeah.
does make me excited for Flair because I always find Flair, their online platform, is always, chock full of,
Hmm.
better quality, films rather than the films that are on the platform for LFF. So it's made me excited, and I hope to God that they keep this on demand for Flair because I think that would make, again, it would be so much more accessible. But
Hmm.
we'll just have to wait and see.
I think for Flair they will because that is a much smaller festival.
Yeah.
Um, I I was really surprised this year that LFF did have this on demand
Yeah, and it wasn't
system.
advertised or anything. It was just all of a sudden we were like, oh,
So I mean I was really surprised by that when everything else, like all the other festivals, like at Toronto, they're like absolutely nothing online. There will be nothing online because they all want to get back and a bit back into the actual cinema. So I was really surprised that they had it this year. And I do hope they continue to do it because it does give you the ability to participate in the festival and essentially as press you're giving the festival free promotion. That's the point
yeah.
of being press, so hopefully they clicked in their head that they're getting free promotion and they're getting films that I didn't even see at that festival. I'm giving them promotion for it. So uh yeah, so I think that was overall I would give it, my experience this year, maybe 2.5 stars.
I would give it 3.5 stars purely because I got, the chance, though my personal life and my work,
Yeah.
made it more difficult to see. Had, things have been a bit more quiet, if I, had a few more evenings off, I could have seen loads more films and like
Hmm.
just having that opportunity made me excited because in the
Yeah.
past I've always been so annoyed and be like, oh, I wanted to watch that one, but it'd gone off and I couldn't afford to be in London on that day.
Yeah.
Like I always felt like I was sort of tugged at both ends, whereas this time it was
Hmm.
only one, which was
Yeah.
really nice.
Hmm. Yeah, hopefully they do this again next year. And fingers crossed, and maybe you'll hear us back again for Flair. Flair is they normally have the majority of their program on
Yeah, that's really
online.
good. And if they do the new system where it's not I feel like it'll be so much more accessible and so many more stories will be shared. And like that is the point of Flair. So I don't see why they would do it like that. So I love Flair. I'm a big Flair fan.
And that's another one, that film Sweetheart. That was at Flair in
Yeah.
2020. Or I guess it was 2021. And it's just now starting to hit, like it's starting to come out, be more accessible and be distributable. Because I've seen a couple of film festivals screening it. So that's another one where you never know where any of these films are going to go. It might end up being a film that you never see ever again. And it could be the best film that you've ever seen. And it just evaporates off the face of the earth because it never gets distributed.
Boiling Point was on the online platform
Uh-huh.
last year. And that when I watched it on Netflix this year, and I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
like how was this not a gala film? Like it's spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people like me were like, oh no, I've got to go see Last Night in Soho, which was just
Yes.
crap.
And that is what, like, I have a lot of problems with film festivals. Sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent, but they do have these gala films, and I understand like the gala films are the films that are going to go on to be the Oscars. It's the producer pays a lot of money to get them to be in these gala positions, and they want the high publicity for it. But there's a lot of films that like aren't as good. Like Drive My Car last year, I think was special presentation, and that was one of the most fantastic films I think I've ever seen in my life. Like I loved that film so much. And it was on the online streaming and it was a special presentation film. It didn't have as much fanfare as some of the other films. And like you said, Last Night in Soho, which was garbage, you know. But I get why they want to publicize these gala films because that's what brings the public in and brings the ticket sales in. Which is why I think I would be interested to go somewhere like Cannes, where it's not accessible to the public, and see sort of how they work in terms of promoting the films. That would be interesting. Maybe next year, Filmies
Filming to Cannes.
Filmies to Cannes.
How live
that would be insane.
Right, that's our goal now. We're gonna work out how we can sneak into Cannes Film Festival. Have a holiday.
I'm just gonna apply for a press pass to Cannes, see what happens. I don't even know if you can apply for press. I think you have to be invited.
We're gonna get in one way or another. I can feel it.
And I suppose that is where we're gonna end this. Obviously we have some things coming in the future. So keep an eye on Film East. This has been Film East Chats. You can listen back to any of our previous episodes by searching Film East Chats anywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can listen back. Our normal episodes are more structured and analytical in nature. We have some episodes that we have pre-recorded that will be coming out soon. Our Instagram is where you're going to be able to find all of our reviews for film festivals. So if we do any other film festivals and we have written reviews, they'll be on our Instagram, which is at films_east. That goes along with our Twitter and our Facebook as well. And our website is film-east.com, where you can find all of our information all in one place. I have collected all of the reviews from LFF and I put them onto one page that you can find if you go onto the What's On tab. You'll see LFF, Film East at LFF, and then Film East at Toronto Film Festival as well. So you'll be able to find our reviews and our podcast episodes from those festivals. Do you have anything else to add?
Thank you.
Thank you to the Academy.
Thank you to London Film Festival. Thank you to my Wi-Fi provider. Thank you to everyone.
And this has been Film East Chats. Bye.
Bye.